And we left off with an introduction to the idea of an array. Someone tell me something they remember about an array from last time we met. It doesn't have to be much.
Pigeonhole.
Other pigeonholes, just like pigeonholes. Excellent. Remember that arrays, in the English language, arrays are always arrays of something. And so in VBA, when we say array, we're talking about an array of variables. Yeah, and those variables could be object variables. So they could be variables that refer to objects, but it is an array of variables. They are locations in memory that are identified by a name. The name of the array is part of the name, and then the index number that says kind of which element in the array that we're after. Now, we did a pretty good job last week getting our arrays set up. Who can remember? You normally, like the simple way to declare an array is to put a number right here. You know, if we want a 35, that would give us 36 elements in our hotel array. But what does it mean if I don't put anything inside those parentheses when I declare the array? That array is, what's the characteristic of that array now that it's got no number inside the parentheses? Yeah, it's variable length. It's what we refer to as a dynamic array. And when we have this line here, we're just saying, hey, I'm going to need to make an array at some point. And later on, I will use the redim statement to actually make the array of the size that I want. And the problem is that I have to have a literal, I can put a number in there. I can't have a variable in there that has the number for the dim statement, but I can have some expression on the redim statement because the redim is actually executable, whereas the dim doesn't execute. The dim is saying, please allocate some memory for me. And before any of that procedure starts executing, all the memory gets allocated. So I couldn't use a variable in the dim. That's the whole reason that they have redim, like they invented redim, was to be able to make an array a dynamic size. And then who can tell me what's the effect of having these declared up here at the top of the module instead of inside the sub-procedure? I can do any kind of variable I can declare out there, arrays or just regular bare variables. What's the difference? Go ahead.
I think it's that so those variables can be used in multiple subs.
That's right. So I could have lots of different sub-procedures all referring to these variables. If I declare a variable inside of a sub-procedure, it's only available inside that sub-procedure. All right. We successfully got our hotels array filled up with all the hotel names reading off the sheet, and our route array all filled up with -1s. We didn't accidentally say that we've already been to hotel number 0, but we struggled a little bit on getting the distance array set up. And so the problem was I was actually trying to read the data going down here as we were reading it because the first loop was going across the columns. So I changed it so the first loop was going across the rows, and let's take a look at that now. So our same outside loop here is taking X from 0 to the hotel count. And when we're reading the hotels, we're looking at that row starting in column 1. But now, as we're thinking about this row, we got to bring in all of these values coming across here. And so we're making now a loop here that says another variable Y is going to start at 1 higher than X is. It's because like here, when X is 0, there's no reason for us to write to Y 0 because that's just a 0. The distance between these two is 0, and that's the default value for all of my distances. Because my distance is an integer, that distance array starts full of zeros. And so there's an implied 0 here. I'm going to skip that. So the first time I'm going to write to my array, it's going to be row number 0, column number 1. Like that is always going to start on one column further than the row is. When I'm on row 0, I want to do column 1 in the array. When I'm on row 1, I want to start with column 2 in the array. And so that's what we have here. And I don't remember what I had backwards here, but this is the one that's going to fill that array for us. So for a given value of X, I'm going to take Y across a set of values. y is going to start at 1 more than x is. And so I'll be writing to that first time through, x is equal to 0, y is equal to 1. And I'll be reading off that row and column from the worksheet. Might just be as simple as having the x and the y crossed here, but we'll get that taking a look. Once you've got that done, we should be able to run this. I've got to stop in here after this loop runs. I'm going to go ahead and run this code, and I should be able to look at all of my variables. So I should be able to look at hotels, HOTELS, pick a number between 0 and 35, 33. That will give me a value there. Anywhere that I look in route, it should be -1. And I'll have to supply 2 indexes for the distance array, dist. So I'll look at row number 5, column number 6. And that's going to be 23. Row number 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Column 6 is 23. Is that what it produced? Yeah, 23. So I have successfully read in this part of the array. I haven't touched this bottom diagonal. And so if I was to cross those to where my x is bigger than my y, or my first dimension is larger than my second dimension, that should be 0 because I just haven't written them in there yet. I've just read off the worksheet and plugged in these values. Okay. Anyone need help getting their code to work? Any questions about what we have here so far? How comfortable are you with what we've done so far on these arrays? It's not simple stuff, but on 0 to 5, where are you? Saying 4, 4, 4, 4. Pretty popular answer. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we would like to fill this in so that this whole thing is specified. So I really want to have this value here. And I really want these values here. Oops. I suppose. So that when I'm trying to figure out where should I go after going to Phoenix, I can just look at this kind of one row, because like the distance between the Sheraton Phoenix and the Los Angeles downtown hotel, 374 miles, it's the same distance if I look at them in reverse order. So what am I going to do so that while I'm filling up this part of my array, I also fill up this part? Any thoughts? How do I get those going in the right place? When I write to number row 0, column 1, I also want to write the same value to row 1, column 0. Go ahead.
That has the row value of the first cell that you start with equal to the column value.
Yes, I think that's it. Like if right here, when I'm writing to row 0, column 1, I want to write to row 1, column 0. Like it's just, if I flip the indices, it's going to put me writing to the right spot. So I can either just copy this line and flip the indices, but because I've just written this value into here, it would be the same as doing this, and so the code's a little bit simpler. And then I'll just reverse the indices here. The first time I was doing this, it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to figure out that's how simple it was. It really took me a while to figure that out. And now it seems so obvious, but not at the time, which is kind of common in programming. It's like, oh, I'm not quite sure how to do this, and then kind of struggle with it. And once you realize it, you go, oh yeah, that's kind of simple once you get there. So now I'm going to go ahead and stop this code and run it again. And now if I look at distance 6, 5, it should be the same as distance 5, 6. should be able to look anywhere in here now and pull the values out. So I've got that, my distance array is fully specified. So at this point, I've got my data structured and I'm ready to start solving the problem. So you remember that our approach is going to be to take the next nearest hotel algorithm. So we'll start somewhere, and the closest one to where we are now is Salt Lake. So we'll start there, and then we're going to ask the question, what's the next closest town, the next closest hotel that I haven't been to yet? And we'll just continue to run that algorithm until we map out the whole approach. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to get rid of my two stop statements in here. In fact, I probably don't really want to be printing these off, so I think I'll just comment these lines out. And then I'm going to make another sub procedure called calc route. And calc route is going to start by calling this initialize. So initialize is what gets all my variables configured, my arrays set up and ready to work. So my calc route is going to start off just by saying initialize. So go load up my arrays is what we're saying. And now I'm ready to start. Building the solution. Now, someone tell me what line would I write here just to say start in Salt Lake City? What array am I going to deal with? What values will I put in there? So I want to record that I'm starting in Salt Lake City. Any thoughts? Go ahead.
Would just say that row begins with row number 3.
So yeah, somehow we're going to be going after this value right here. Now, we could read this off of row number 3 on the worksheet, but our whole purpose here is to learn how to use arrays. So we've just read that into an array, and this is now kind of a visual representation of that array on the worksheet. So I want to write the 1 here, because the 1 is telling me that we're talking about hotel number Salt Lake City, right? So here's hotel number 1. And these are the 3 arrays that I have to work with. And so I'm just going to put that into my route array. And I want to put it in the very first slot in that array, because the idea here is that I'm going to line up one hotel number after another here to say this is the route that I'm going. And so I just have to put here a 1 instead of -1. And that's going to say, that says, first step in the route is Salt Lake City. So I'll just do that right here. I'll just say route sub 0 equals 1. And that's, kind of abstract. So I'm going to put a note on here. This means start at Salt Lake City. Now I'm going to say route sub 1 is equal to something else. Here's the part where I'm going to need something that can go and figure out what the next hotel is. And so maybe I'm just going to write a function for that. In fact, let me just go ahead and call it next hotel. And since my arrays are accessible across, I don't have to pass any arrays down there. I can just say next hotel. I don't have to pass anything to it. So let's go ahead and make a function procedure now called next hotel. Now, ultimately, I know that my next hotel is going to be this one in Las Vegas. And I think after that, I think we're going to Anaheim. I think it's going to go 1719. My recollection, it could be wrong there. So ultimately, I've got to do some work here, but ultimately, I'm going to set the name of this function equal to 7. For this, just to get this next step, but you can see how I'm going to say, hey, route, like the next location in my route, I'm going to say, go get me the next hotel. And ultimately, it's going to return 7 first time through, but now we've got to do the kind of have to do the heavy lifting here. Whoops, got to do the heavy lifting to tell it to calculate that. So the hotel I'm going to go to next is going to depend on the hotel that I'm currently at. I have a couple of approaches. I could pass down to my next hotel function. I could pass it down the hotel that I'm on, or I could have this function figure out what the hotel I'm on is. What would I have to do to have this function to figure out what my current hotel is? Like, here's all of my like the data I have to work with. How could I tell what's the current hotel? Which array would I have to look at to tell which the current hotel is? Yeah, in my route array. All I have to do is find the last value in this array before I get to a -1. And so if I just start kind of looking at the top and keep going until I find a -1 and then go, oh, it was the one just before this, that's what that is. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's go ahead and create another function called current hotel. Ultimately, I mean, as I'm just kind of getting this started, current hotel, like the first time through, current hotel is going to equal 1. Now we got to figure this one out. So let's just iterate over that array. So I'm going to dim x as an integer for x equals 0 to, and it turns out here that I can ask an array what its upper boundary is. And so I don't have to know it or somehow record it. I can just ask that array, what's your upper boundary? And the function is called ubound. Stands for upper boundary of my route array. Now I got to figure out, how am I going to tell? Why don't we do it this way? Why don't, instead of going from the bottom to the top, let's go from the top to the bottom. To do that, we'll have to go backwards. So now, as soon as I find a value that's greater than -1, that's the one I want to return. That'll be easy. If, looking at my route array, if route sub x is greater than -1, then I'm going to do something. What am I going to do? I'm going to set the return value, current hotel, is equal to route sub x. So just think about that. As I'm starting way down here and coming up, my x keeps getting smaller, I'm looking to find when route sub x is greater than -1. I find it right here. And yeah, that's what I want to return, the 1. That's the hotel I'm at. And so route sub x should be what I'm returning. And then I'm done. So let me exit my function. What should I return if I make it all the way through this loop and never find one that's greater than this? What should I send back? Current hotel of 0 is a valid thing. I better send back a -1. I'm going to send back something so that, yeah, and so this is going to be returning a long. What have I made my hotel indexes? My route is holding longs. So this is going to return long. If I don't tell it to return something, it's going to return 0. It's going to say my current hotel is like that one in Los Angeles. So I better return -1. I'm not sure I'm going to actually do anything with this, but at least I'll know if I return -1 what that means. And next hotel is also bringing back along. Okay, so now the current hotel will be the hotel that I'm at. Maybe I'll just call a variable I am at. So dim will be more inclusive. We are at equals, and then we'll just call the current hotel. Whoops. Dim we are at as long. And then I'll stop us right here. All right. So if I run my calc route now, it's going to go initialize the arrays. It's going to plop a 1 into the first position of my route. It's going to call next hotel. We're going to go calculate where we are based on our current hotel function. And I'm expecting we are at to be 1 when I run this. So I'm going to go ahead and come back to calc route and run that. Let's see what we are at. Is equal to 1. That's great. All right, I did go through this loop kind of quickly. Show me your comfort level with what we're doing to calculate where we currently are, 0 to 5. 5, 4, 5, 1.
Yeah, so I'm having my battle react is coming up as 0. Can you show what we did to make it a 1?
So right here is where it becomes 1. It becomes 1 because I put a 1 into route 0. Now, let's make sure also, you might also get zeros if you didn't initialize. So here in our loop up in our initialize function, we're plugging in -1 into every position of our route to start with. You have that? And you've got this down in current hotel. Quick look.
Initialize the route. No, route is 1 right now. And then the current hotel is route X.
You have the exit function on the wrong side of the if and if.
Oh, I need to have this inside.
Yeah, you only want to exit if you have found one that's the right size. All right. Okay, so now that we've got our current location set to 1, this is the only part of our distance array that I care about, because I want to find what is closest. I just want to find the smallest number in this part of the array. So let me just start off by printing off all of those values that we're looking at. Make sure that I'm in control of the right numbers. So let me dim x as an integer here. And then let's just loop across that dimension. For x equals 0 to the upper boundary. And my hotels array is the same size as my route array. They're both going to give me the number of hotels that I'm after. So I'll do the upper boundary of hotels. That'll give me 0 through 35. Let me just print off x and distance sub x, comma, we are at. So if I'm thinking about x as being the rows, then that's actually looking down this set of numbers, which is the same as this set of numbers. Like either way I look at it, it's the same value. So that should print off 0, 691, 1, 0, 2, 653, and so forth. Yeah, 0, 691, 2, 653. So I've got those values. So now I got to figure out the smallest one that I haven't been to. Let's start off with figuring out the smallest one. Any thoughts? How am I going to look across that set of numbers and figure out the smallest one? Yeah. Ah, okay, good. So what you're saying is we can just look at them and we can compare the smallest one I've seen yet to the current value. When I find a smaller one, just remember that one. I like it. Well, I don't think it's a problem. The problem's not about being 0. It's a problem of being one that we've been to before. So yeah, the 0, that's the one I'm currently at. But it's not just that one I want to ignore. I want to ignore all the ones that I've been to. And that's part of the set that I've been to. So that's another thing that we're going to have to deal with. But for now, let's just get access to that set of numbers. Or let's just try to find the smallest one that's there. That'll be the 0 until we correct for it. Okay, so let me dim something called the small, or I'll call it the short distance. Now my distances are integers, so this will be an integer. All right, and let's set it equal to something that's so big that when we make our first comparison, we'll be sure to pick up that as the possible smallest one. So it might be tempting to say, well, look, just start it off at 691. Just look at the first one. But then I've got to apply the logic about have I been there to know if I'm allowed to start here or somewhere else. But if I just start with like 1,000,000 miles here, there's no distance that's going to be, like the first distance that I read is going to be smaller than 1,000,000. The only trouble is I can't quite put 1,000,000 in there. So because it's an integer. So it can only be like 32,000. $32,767. That's like the maximum that it could be in that one. I might just put 24,000, the circumference of the Earth. If I find a distance between hotels that's not smaller than the circumference of the Earth, there's a problem somewhere. So I'm glad with 24,000 or 32,000 or something like that. Okay, so now when I print one of these off, I'm just going to say if the one I'm currently looking at, which is this expression right here, if that is less than my short distance, then I just want to say, oh, that's the new shortest distance that I've seen so far. And so once I've been through that whole loop, I'll do another debug.print with the shortest distance is. So short distance is going to start off at 32,000. And the first comparison I make, we're going to say, oh, is the distance that we're looking at less than the short distance? Yes. So my short distance is going to pick up that value. So it should pick up this 691. And that will now be the short distance. So the next time through the loop, I'm going to say, hey, is the one that we're currently at, which will be the 0, is that less than our current short distance? Yes, that'll be my new short distance. So this should run through and pick up a 0 by the time we're done. So maybe I'll just go back to my loop, start short distance off there, and run that. It should print those off. The short distance is 0. The problem is 0 is not helpful because it's one I've already been to. In fact, yeah, I'd like some way now to figure out, have I been to this? Like, how do I figure out if I've been to a particular hotel? Yeah, is it in my route? Is that number in my route? So I'm going to stop my code. And I'm going to make yet another function. We are function happy today. It's going to be pretty similar to my current hotel because I'm scanning across the route. So I'm going to copy that one. And I'm just going to call it been there. Now this one, I'm going to send a hotel. I want to know if I've been to a particular hotel. So been there, I'll call it hotel index. No, lowercase L and a capital I is kind of problematic next to each other. NDX, my hotel index. And this one is going to return true or false. So I'm going to send it a hotel number, and it's going to tell me if it's in the route array or not. So I think I'm going through this. I don't really care which way I look through it. I'm just going to leave this as going backwards. That's fine. And now my if condition is going to be if route sub X, like if the hotel that's in a particular location in my route array is equal to my hotel index. Then I'm going to set been there equal to true. And I'm done. If you want, if I make it all the way through the loop, I never found a match, I could come here and set been there equal to false. But I don't really need to do that because as a Boolean expression, it will return false unless I tell it to return true. Some people like to actually expressly see it in the code. I'm fine with that too. So now I should be able to call been there, pass it a hotel number, and it will just tell me if it's in the route, if that number's in the route. This is why we had to get rid of those zeros, because at some point I'm going to be asking, have I been to that first hotel, hotel number 0? And we want it to say no until I've been there. So that's why you have the -1s to start. So now I should be able to say if the distance that we're looking at is less than the short distance and been there of the hotel we're looking at, X. In fact, we don't want to know if we have been there. We want to know if we've not been there. And not been there, X. So if the distance between hotel X and wherever we currently are is smaller than our short distance, the shortest one we've seen so far, and been there is equal to false. I wonder if it would be easier to read to say been there is equal to false. That means the same thing. I think not been there reads like better English, but I think this is probably better to understand. So it takes those two conditions to pick up a new short distance. One, it's shorter than the shortest distance we've seen so far, and it's one we haven't been to. This should prevent us from hitting the 7. Prevent us from hitting the 0, picking up the 0. Okay, so we'll run it to the stop here and we'll see what we've got in our short distance. Let's see. I don't want to initialize, I want calc route. Short distance is 425. Now I know from past experience that the one to Las Vegas, number 7, is the shortest one. We can look across and see these are all larger than 400. So it has found that, it's found the correct one. But the trouble is, I don't want to know what the distance is. I want to know the hotel that had the shortest distance. Oof. Any thoughts on what I'm going to do there? Go ahead. So one approach would be, just come through here. Now just look through again until I find 425. And then I know the loop that I'm after. That would work as long as I don't have any two properties with the same value. but I've got like these three that are all 13 miles away from something. They're 13 miles away from number 13. That's like a lucky occurrence of some kind. So yeah, I mean, if this was my approach, if I was really looking for this one, I'd never get there because I'd find it right here. But it's the idea. You need to know the index number where you saw your smallest one. So in addition to recording the shortest distance that I've seen, I'm also going to record the index where I saw that. And so I've got short distance I've declared as an integer. Let me dim short index or next closest hotel. And this one we've declared our hotel numbers, we've declared as long. And I'm going to go ahead and give it, I'm going to give it an initial value as well. I'm always expecting to find one that's the next shortest. So let me just give it as a -1. So that if I get back, I definitely don't want to leave it as a 0 because if something goes haywire, I don't want it to return a valid hotel number. So I'm going to set it off to -0, to -1. And now when I see a new short distance, I'm just going to record my closest hotel. Next closest hotel is equal to like the number that we saw. So that's equal to 0 or equal to X. And now that's the expression that we need to return. So instead of returning 7, which is what it will return the first time, it'll return the next closest hotel that we calculated. Ooh. Questions? How comfortable are you with this algorithm, what we're doing so far, 0 to 5? 4, 3, 4, 5, 3. Okay. I think I'm still going to stop it right there. So let me stop my code, come back up to calc route, and run that again. And closest hotel, yeah, it's figured out the 7 here. That looks great. I think I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my stop from here. I think this one's doing what it needs to do now. And let me stop it here. And I should have route sub 0 should be 1, and route sub 1 should be 7. Well, now the rest of this looks pretty easy because I just got to keep calculating what my next hotels are. Route sub 2 is number 12. It's route sub 3. No, a 19 was the third one, not the second one. So I guess Fairplex, I don't know where Fairplex is. Properties, Fairplex. It's in Pomona, California. I don't know much about Pomona, California, but it's somewhere near Los Angeles. And apparently that's the closest one after we go from Las Vegas. And then from there, we go to Anaheim. Well, now that I can see that I've got kind of a clear pattern here, I should be able to put this into a loop. So let me dim X here. Now for X equals 1 to the upper boundary of my hotels. So now when X is 1, we'll say route sub 1 equals next hotel. When X is 2, route sub 2, route sub 3. I should go through and calculate them all for each one of my properties. Now, because we're skipping the first one, we're hard coding the first one, I'm going to make another loop here that just loops to that again, but starts at 0. And let's just print, oops, for X equals 0. Let's just print off our route. For X equals 0, let's see, so X is going to start at 0, and I kind of want to show this as the first step. So let me print X plus 1. So to print 1 through 36 instead of 0 through 35. I think then I'll concatenate on a period and a space. And then I want to show the name of the hotel. So I'll concatenate on my hotel array. So when I'm going to show step 1 is Salt Lake City. Well, Salt Lake City is right here. It's hotel number 1. So when route sub X is 1, I want to show Salt Lake City. So I'll just take route sub X and use that as the index for hotels. So I want to say, ultimately, I want to say hotel 1 here the first time through, but the way I'm getting there is with route sub X. So the first time through here, route sub 0 is going to be 1, Salt Lake. Next time through, route sub 0 or route sub 1 will be 7, Las Vegas, and so forth. So that should print off the whole route that I've calculated. Just want to go and get rid of my other debug.prints so that I don't obliterate my, I don't even remember where they were. Here we go, the short distance here. And here's where I'm printing the current one. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and stop this, get rid of my stop, and run calc route. I think that's going to generate the route. That's upper bound of hotels. Route sub X equals next hotel. Hotels here. Hotel route sub X. That looks better. Hotels. So that's what it calculates. Start in Salt Lake City. That looks good. Go to Las Vegas. Then to Fairplex, which is in Pomona, California. Anaheim. This looks pretty good. I'm starting here in Salt Lake, going to Las Vegas. Now I'm going down to Los Angeles. And Anaheim, Cerritos. Anyone know where Cerritos is? Somewhere close to Los Angeles? Yeah, good. Long Beach, that's by Los Angeles. Los Angeles, that's pretty close to Los Angeles. Beverly Hills, that's close to Los Angeles. Los Angeles Downtown Hotel. Monarch Beach, is Monarch Beach close to Los Angeles? Yeah. La Jolla, now we're going down to San Diego. It looks great. San Diego, San Diego, San Diego. It's kind of identified this cluster and doing San Diego. That looks wonderful. Palm Springs. I'm a little troubled by Palm Springs. Palm Springs. Where's Palm Springs? There's Palm Springs. Yeah, so I started here, I came to Vegas, then I went to Los Angeles, then to San Diego, then to Palm Springs. Like getting to Palm Springs from San Diego seems like it's much more out of the way than if I had come down and kind of made a little detour to go to Palm Springs here and then went to Los Angeles and then San Diego. Not terrible. And then Bakersfield. Where's Bakersfield? Oh, Bakersfield is here. So I came down the 15, came into Los Angeles, San Diego, Palm Springs, up to Bakersfield. Yeah, kind of went right back past that. I don't know. It doesn't seem like I would have had to come down to San Diego anyway. Doesn't look terrible. Probably not the way I would pick to go, but this is not so bad. So Bakersfield, San Jose. San Jose is up here. Looks pretty good. Silicon Valley, that's somewhere near San Jose. Pleasanton, I don't know where that is, but San Francisco, that's right up there. That looks pretty good. I told you this one that's in Montreal really isn't in Montreal. Where is this one actually? It's in San Francisco. So San Francisco is where we're after for that one that says Montreal. So that doesn't look too bad. San Francisco, San Francisco, San Francisco. Yeah, I'm kind of liking this. San Rafael, Sacramento, Seattle. Well, right up the coast. Ooh. Where's Scottsdale? Phoenix. Yeah, so we found the closest one. It was closer to go to Vegas. Phoenix. It's about, what is it, about 4 or 5 hours from Las Vegas to Phoenix. And it looks like it's a little bit less to Los Angeles, which took us into Los Angeles. And we went way up the coast. And then from there, back down to Arizona. Right? Would have been way better to go to Las Vegas, then down to Phoenix, then to San Diego, then up the coast. Is there a problem with our algorithm? No, I mean, it's a bad algorithm to solve this problem, but it's one that we can actually calculate. It gave us a pretty good route. The dissatisfying part about this is we could have done better with the pencil on Google Maps pretty quickly. But our goal wasn't really to find the shortest route. It was to learn a little bit about working with arrays, which I think we've done. Questions? I taught this a little bit different than I have in the past, specifically calculating our current hotel instead of passing it in. It was more code to write, but it makes it way easier to understand than trying to keep track of which one we've passed in. Apparently, it makes it about 20 minutes easier, because that was all I had to teach for today, and it usually takes us right up till close to the end. Other questions? Anything else you want to know about arrays? Remember, exam is due by tomorrow evening. So if you haven't taken the exam yet, get out and do it. And I guess that's it. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.